I have been a patron of Population Matters for so long I can't quite remember now, but pretty much from the kickoff, I think. And I have been proud to be a patron for that length of time, because it's been clear to me that if people aren't addressing the big population questions, then they're probably not talking about sustainability very realistically. So from early days in the Green Party through to the Royal Society, this has been part of what I stand for, if you like. So imagine my disappointment that this now still seems to be very difficult for some people in the Green Party to get their heads around. And if I might, I just want to take time out to explain to you a rather peculiar situation going on at the moment. There's a publication which the Green Party publishes called Green World. It's quite good. Most of the time, I rather enjoy reading it still. I'm still a member of the Green Party, not particularly active, but still a member. And Green World has an editorial board. And in its collective wisdom, the editorial board of Green World has chosen not to carry a pamphlet, a leaflet, from Population Matters, because it felt that this would be an inappropriate way of bombarding the readers of Green World with material about population. Now, to me, this is pretty unbelievable. A couple of people have resigned from the editorial board because of this. The Green Party seems to be in a terrible state of confusion about it. People like myself are obviously lobbying the party and its leaders to ask what the hell is going on, when the one political party in this country that has systematically brought population into its election manifestos and its campaigning and its general advocacy can't bring itself to communicate about the work that Population Matters does. Now, I only raise that because it is still a matter of considerable concern to people in the world of population, sustainability at large, that our big NGOs in this country still don't think that it is their role to be sharing the advocacy around the importance of population issues, have somehow come to a set of received and indeed incredibly settled opinions that whatever the work is that they do, whether it's in the world of development or aid or human rights or environment or climate change, whatever work it is they do, somehow they have no responsibility, let alone obligation, for including population as part of that work. And I'm happy to say now that Population Matters, and Roger's been very involved in this, and my colleague Robin Maynard here this evening has been very involved in this. We're engaged yet again in trying to contact these NGOs and try and tease out what is going on. What is the sticking point? What is the problem about addressing population issues? Logically, compassionately, intelligently, sensitively, but radically, what is the problem in what are meant to be the collective heartland of progressive civil society in our midst today? What's going on? So I'm going to try and shed a tiny bit of light on that, because I sort of need to do this occasionally, just to see if I have still missed something when it comes to interpreting what's happening in the minds of so many people for whom I have such respect and such admiration for the work that they do. And I'm just going to look really at four sort of possibilities that's happening in this world. The first is to consider the issue that it's a distraction for them. The second is to look at the issue that there's something really rather difficult going on, quasi-racist, possibly to do with concerns about immigration that cause them to have great fears, trepidation about dealing with population. Thirdly, that it's elitist, and that it is a cause that seems to be advocated by more than an average percentage of middle-aged white blokes. Bit of a problem, Roger.
Absolutely.
Sorry, but you know.
Wrong gender.
And we need to look at that head on, because I think that's really very important. And then lastly, this whole question that somehow it's inevitable. The population is something that happens almost regardless of the interventions that we make as a species at different points in the development of humankind. A sort of fatalism, that there's not very much we can do about it anyway, so don't trouble us with it, because if there's nothing we can do about it, then we've got tons of stuff we can get on with and hope to have a bit of an impact on, so don't give us another issue that is so big and scary and we know we can't have any impact on it at all. So let's just see what each of those four sets of concerns, if you like, look like from a perspective of people who care passionately about the world today. So the first, this notion of distraction. Well, this goes back a long way. It goes right back to the idea of a sort of standoff, a competition between consumption on the one hand and population on the other hand. Now, these two things are, of course, constantly interacting with each other. As Paul Ehrlich, more than 45 years ago, said for the first time, the net impact of humankind on society is a function of how many people there are, our level of affluence, stage of economic development, and the technology that we use to achieve that level of affluence for people. So we know that population and consumption go hand in hand. This is not startling news. But there is a prevailing view, still, unbelievably, that if your focus is on overconsumption in the rich world, that you really shouldn't be doing very much about overpopulation in the poor world. This might distract you from the serious business of addressing consumption, taking the argument into those kind of heights of wealthy individuals, organizations, societies in the rich world, and continuing to campaign about the need for more intelligent consumption today. Now, personally, this either-orism, either you're worried about overconsumption or you're worried about overpopulation, is so completely facile as to be not worth dwelling on any longer. So I won't. Most people I know in the world today, even men, are capable of holding more than one idea in their head at the same time. So if we don't get to grips with the issue about the undesirability of continuing population growth in the UK and do it in the right way, we have to acknowledge that we will have failed anybody who says, what did you do about that? How did the UK find its population growing at a time when every other country in Europe, I think almost without exception, has got a stable or still declining population? Roger will always pick up on my factual inaccuracies later on. It's very useful doing sessions with Roger. He is a compendium of correct data, unlike me, who has a somewhat episodic approach to data, but there we go. So this story about us being quasi-racists and harboring a deep dislike of people from outside this country coming into our country, that we're really xenophobes in disguise, is actually so deeply offensive that, again, I wonder how it has been perpetuated for so many years. And thirdly, then, we get on to this interesting issue about elitism. We are all, not quite, but too many of us, middle-class white blokes. And who are we to talk about, essentially, the interests of people in developing and emerging economies, as well as in our own country, as you can tell? I've put that first tonight. Who are we to talk about that? What do we know about the lives of people in other countries, particularly the lives of women in many of those countries? And this, again, astonishes me. For those of you who have been involved in population issues, you will know that right from the start, concern about population has always been about rights, about human rights. It's been a rights-based discourse. If you go right back into the sort of origins of this debate and then pick it up through the 1994 conference in Cairo on population, you'll see that this issue of human rights has been at the heart of it. The last point I want to raise is this odd thing that you sometimes get when you eyeball a deep, passionate campaigner about the environment and development and human rights, and you look at them and you say, so just explain to me, we've dismissed all of these concerns about a distraction and not important and all the rest of it, and you can see I'm not really an elitist or a racist or anything else. So what else is going on in your mind? What's the other reason? And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they will think, they say, that actually we're on a certain path here. There's a certain momentum about growth in human numbers in the planet today, and there's really nothing much we can do about it, Jonathan. So roughly 80 million more people at the end of every year than at the start of that year, roughly 80 million more. And clearly this creates huge momentum in the way population continues to grow. And if you look at the UN's projections about this, you will see exactly what the consequences of those different projections look like. So the median projection is that we will head towards 9.2, 9.3 billion people by 2050. And most people now seem to think that it is absolutely guaranteed that that's where the population will be by 2050. Doesn't matter that the UN points out this is only a projection. It is subject to all sorts of things in the world today, not least intelligent interventions by human beings. It is only a projection. It's our median projection, 9.3 billion. And then you look at the high projection, which obviously is scarily high, 11 billion upwards, and you look at a low projection for 2050, which I think goes as low as 8 billion in the UN's projections. Now, what those projections tell us is that should we choose to intervene in a macro way around making family planning programs available in those parts of the world that most need them, where women most need them, we could easily combat that momentum and begin to put human numbers onto a declining trajectory rather than a rising trajectory. The reality is, and I do hope you'll have a chance to check this out on our website, is that we sort of know what to do about reducing total fertility rates in the world today. There are so many brilliant examples of what has been done, and not only from the countries that you would expect, but from really difficult places which have had to, my God, have they had to dig in to make this work. So we know there's a huge amount still to be done here. The issue is investment. It's actually, at the end of the day, it's about money, it's about leadership, it's about clarity. It's about getting on and understanding what it is that can be done. I had a little whoop of internal joy when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation decided, hey, fantastic, the population was quite a big deal. And that maybe we should start thinking about that as one of those big upstream issues, which if you don't address, a lot of things are going to continue to go wrong downstream. And the great benefit of all of this is that Melinda Gates is a Catholic, and yet argues the case for the right of every woman, be that woman a Muslim, a Catholic, a Buddhist, an agnostic, an atheist, a druid, the right of every single woman to have exactly the same provision of contraceptive services, to give them the same opportunities in their life that everybody else has. So we know what success looks like. It's worked, which makes the reduction in funding over the last few years even more unaccountable. So, do not feel fatalistic about 9.3 billion by 2050. If we really got our act together in the course of the next 5 years, and I know that is a big, big if, given how many other things we have to address in the world today, but if we really got our act together and we really prioritized investment in the right kind of consent-based family planning program, or in the countries that need it most, it is possible to envisage how we would move more rapidly towards that 8 billion level rather than the 11, 12 billion level. In that difference between the upper and the lower projections that the UN offers us, in that gap lies the future destiny of humankind. That's the most astonishing thing for us to think about. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight, and thank you, Roger.